Well, good evening, or hello, good morning, or good afternoon, whatever time you are tuning in to view this podcast. Once again, I am Marvinetta Woodley Penn here with All Stories Matter, because I believe that all stories really do matter. Now, most of us walk around thinking, oh, I'm just so insignificant. My story doesn't matter. I don't even have a story. Trust me, you're here. You have a history, you have a future, you have a now, and all of those things combine to make up your story. And people want to hear your stories. I would love to hear your story. So if you want to share your story, then by all means, you need to contact me. You can get my information from Facebook. You can get my information from Instagram. You can find me in just about any social media, or you can just send me an email at marvinettapenn@gmail.com, because I love hearing your stories. And in today's world, it's really important that we share our stories, because it's through sharing those stories that we build community, that we learn to listen, that we get to practice those essential communication skills. Before the internet, before social media, even before telephones and television, people used to sit around and share stories. That's how traditions were passed on. That's how communities came together. That's how traditions were formed, by sharing stories. Unfortunately, a lot of those stories were not written down, and so we don't know the histories that are so rich, the stories that we could be performing on stage. As most of you know, I love performing on stage. I want to know some stories about people who look like me. I need more stories about the day-to-day of people of all cultures. That's what makes community, and that's what helps us understand one another just a little bit more, makes us trust one another a little bit more, makes us want to love on one another just a little bit more. So share a story today. Today, I have a very, very interesting story that we are all going to learn about. Miss Jodi Hope Michaels is in the studio with me today, and she is going to tell us her story. So without further ado, Jodi, where do you want to start with your story?
Well, I will just say hello and thank you for having me on your show. I'm delighted to be here with you today.
Yes.
What can I say about myself? I've lived here in the lovely city of Kalamazoo for the past 15 years.
Okay.
And I've spent the vast majority of my adult life working with folks in other cultures and parts of the world, and like you, I love people sharing their stories, and I love when we learn more about ourselves from people's stories. And I'll start there.
Awesome. Well, tell me, since you're not from Kalamazoo, where'd you grow up? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
And that is where I grew up, and I lived there my whole young life until it was, for me, time to go to college. And I actually, this is a while ago when we didn't have, cheap long distance plans and Skype and then Zoom and FaceTime and video ways to be in touch. I went across the continent and went to college in California. And so I was...
Now, how did that happen?
Well, a few different ways. I was interested in going somewhere else. And I explored a few places around Canada. And... Fun fact, I did a sport that is now called artistic swimming. And
oh my gosh, so many threads I want to pull on. Go ahead.
Back then they called it synchronized swimming.
Yes.
But I had done that since I was quite small. And there are a few universities around, and there's a really good school that happened to have a synchronized swimming team. And I looked at and went to Stanford in the Bay Area. And so I was an athlete in college too, which is pretty cool.
Now, I've got to pull on those threads.
Go for it.
So were you always an adventurous child? You wanted to find out things on your own? How, because going from Canada all the way to California must have been a hell of an experience for a teenager. Did you go with were there other people that you were in high school with who went to Stanford?
I did not know a
And
single
how did
soul.
what did your parents think about that?
Well, first, it's a really good school.
Of course.
So, it was a great opportunity to go to a great school and, to continue doing this sport that I was involved in at the time. And I didn't really think about it this way, back then, but I was an international student. So I left my country to go to another one for school, and I got to know, and so many people did that at that school, and so I got to know a lot of people from a lot of different places, and it sort of, gave me a bit of a, first you're leaving your home for the first time in your whole life, and then you're with a bunch of other people who are doing the same thing, and I would say I might not have understood, I'm going really far away, and I'm, going to talk to my family only on Sundays, and I'll, I can't just go home on the regular. I don't think I thought any of that through.
Yeah.
But, it placed me in an experience to, just start to figure out, what am I doing?
In hindsight, did it feel like it was just the next step in your path, in your journey? Going away from home, being in this environment where you were an international student and you were meeting international students, and now you're working with international.
I think that so many, like every single moment in your life puts you on on a path and takes you on new paths, and you would not be who you are if not for all the things. And so, I've been on a bunch of, pathways, and all of them have been important for, who I am today.
Fabulous. Now, what was your inspiration for getting into synchronized swimming? Was it the lady who, the famous lady from the movies? Or were you exposed to it in Canada?
It was a very modern thing. So,
cool.
In the 80s, it became an Olympic sport.
Okay.
And the top swimmer was a Canadian named Carolyn Waldo.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason I got into it is because my mom had always swum and was always into swimming, and made us take swimming lessons from a super young age. She was a lifeguard, then nurse. But I reached a point when I was around the age of, I don't remember how old, like maybe 10. And I had run out of all the swimming classes that you could take for your age. You had to be 13 to take the next one. And, my mom was like, you have to keep swimming. So there's a couple options of like swim things. And one was speed swimming, and the other was this synchro thing. And so she took me to check out both of them. And the synchro thing was, had underwater speakers and had, parts of your practices where you're like, doing cool stuff, and you're not just going back and forth in the pool, which you're also doing a lot of the going back and forth. But I was like, that looks more fun, more fun. So that is how I ended up in it, because I had to be in a pool.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So being in synchronized swimming helped you get to California. Are you still a swimmer?
I swam yesterday morning, but, if you had asked me this like a year or so ago, I don't swim as often as I should.
Oh, okay.
But I love the water.
Nice. I'm not going to go down this tangent, but one of my best girlfriends is a swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
She loves swimming, and she just got into scuba diving, and she's just having a ball. I think we need to follow those things that bring us joy. Yes. So, you said that there were lots of things that have brothers and sisters. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have one of each.
Oh, nice.
I am the eldest, and then I have a sister, Jenny, and a brother, Matt, and we round out the 3 Michaels kids.
And what do they do?
They do lots of things.
Okay.
You know, they're busy. They have wonderful families, and Jenny works in this world of speakers.
Oh, cool.
And Matt works in a world of business, and they're fun to be around.
Cool. Now, are they still in Canada?
Nope. Somehow we are all in completely different places in this country. So my sister is out in LA, my brother's in the DC area, I'm here in Kalamazoo,
Kind of in the middle.
and our parents are in the Hamilton, Ontario area.
Oh, nice, nice. So what brought you to Kalamazoo?
So I have been with this fabulous guy, Natalio, for 25 years. And we were living in Montreal, where he was doing his PhD in Spanish history and literature. And he was looking into the job market in Golden Age Spanish. And there were not that many jobs. And one of the few jobs that was up was in this place called Kalamazoo, Michigan, at Western Michigan University.
Awesome.
And so I did not know anything about Kalamazoo before we first came and checked it out, liked what we saw, and then moved here. And I have now lived here for 15 years.
Great. Now, wait a minute. California, Stanford, and then Montreal. Or was there something in between?
I spent a lot of years working with folks in the Middle East, doing amazing work in the, human rights, social justice, the nonprofit and the sort of, let's try to make a better world space. And so I spent some time in that area. I lived in New York City for a couple of years. And so I made a very circuitous route to Kalamazoo, but where I live now is really the closest to where I grew up that I've ever lived, because even Montreal is about half an hour further away, or a little more than that, than Kalamazoo.
Okay. So did you say you lived in the Middle East?
I spent 3 years living in Jerusalem, and then while living in Montreal, spent a lot of time visiting the region. I worked with a program that was based out of Montreal, and with a bunch of cool folks doing good works in that neck of the woods.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Whoa. You have but you've always been pretty much in nonprofit world. What did you get your degree in?
I got a degree in human biology, and back then I was a pre-med, so I had been on a trajectory to go to med school, and then sometimes if you're reasonably good at something and you can just sort of do it, you keep going in a certain path because it's what you've always told yourself you're going to do. And I think I reached a point, and I had already finished all the pre-med requirements and college and everything else, and then I realized even in high school I got a waiver to not have to be in class when they did dissections. I didn't like the sight of blood, and I thought, I don't know that I thought through, why do I want to do this thing? And that's when I got to sort of open up to, what do I want to do? And I took some painting and drawing classes in New York, and I spent some time, just exploring that creative side of making art. But at the same time, I started, kind of falling into this world of nonprofits and working with folks doing cool things. And that's sort of where I've been. And now here in Kalamazoo,
Let me get back to, I know, we're going to get to that, but
Okay.
I like details. I want to go into,
Go for
let me
details.
just go into that. Were you with a circle of people who were doing the same thing when you were doing the arts, and these conversations start getting started, and then you found out about some interesting work, or how did that come about?
I think I did. I lived with folks who were also like, burgeoning artists, and just interested in, figuring out who they were, and figuring out how to experience the world, and things like that. And I guess my my curiosity and moving around thing sort of took its hold, and I think you never know what the jobs and what the career paths are out there for you when you're a young person. You know what you see. You know what you're told are good ideas.
Yes.
But 90% or more than 90% of the things that one could do, you don't even know that those things exist.
Indeed.
So, I just started seeing people doing different things. And I think back, and what I do today, which is, I work in the nonprofit space with folks from all around the world. I would have never imagined that was like a thing that you could do, or a thing that you could do in Kalamazoo. And I'm a big fan of helping folks when they were younger than me learn that there's so many cool things that you could do.
Yes.
And it's really you could do one thing that you didn't really think through, or that you didn't, that wasn't on your radar, and suddenly it can completely like alter your path.
Yes.
And so
Cool.
that's been something that has happened in my life, and I appreciate being exposed to new things and new people and new pathways.
So when you were at Stanford, did you have a lot of experiences where you were, even though you had your coursework and you knew what you wanted to do there, but did you dibble and dabble in other things that you were curious about?
I did.
That
And
helped
there
you
was the way the school is structured, there was space for that. So
Yes.
I took a class that was sculpture for non-majors. I took windsurfing. I took all these literature classes that were sort of cross-posted with things that had something to do with science. So I think, and I also studied, health in the global south. So I was also looking at the world. So I really had I got a degree that was like a hodgepodge of lots of different things, which gave me a bit of a, an eye into a bunch of different things.
So
that
what do
people
you
do.
think sparked your interest in health in the global south? Was there something in your childhood and something about when you were growing up where you were kind of introduced to these global issues?
I think I just started to see that the world was much bigger than what I had been exposed to. And I had friends who had studied abroad. I didn't, yes, I was an international student, but I didn't do a study abroad during college. But I had lots of friends who did, and they would come back and, tell stories about their time in Chile or stories about their time in Italy, or and it was interesting. And I thought, wow, that's really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. When I was in college, because I'm from a little town called East St. Louis, and my family would pack up and drive to Chicago every summer to see my sister who lived here, and I really thought I was doing something. And then when I got to college, because I was an English major, so my final French class, all the students were around the teacher's desk talking about when they went skiing in Switzerland, and they were here and they were there when they were 5 and 6 years old. I'm like, what? People actually do this? Mm-hmm. So I made up my mind this would never happen to me again, and that's when I started traveling internationally. Once I graduated and got myself situated where I could travel. And then I started Global Girls, my organization, so that I could take other girls around the world. But there are always these triggers, these little sparks that come up like, wow, this is a possibility. Whoa, this is something. Whoa, and you never know where they're going to come.
You never know.
You never know where you're going. And so putting yourself in those environments where you can meet other international students, where you can be around people having these conversations, must have been so rich for you.
It was fun, and it, I think, helped me, be on the path that I've been on, which is really spending a lot of time with people from a lot of different places, and in so doing, getting to know the world better, and getting to know, my place in it better, and getting to know, how we're connected.
Yes.
So today, and for the last 9 years, I've been the executive director of Global Ties Kalamazoo, and we do exchange. Okay. And so we focus on professional and cultural exchange, and we welcome folks from all around the world to Kalamazoo and West Michigan, and make connections between people in all different fields with folks who do something that's at least tangentially related, so that they can find, that connection, whatever it might be, and, maybe run with that, maybe develop some kind of ongoing, collaboration idea, or just an ongoing relationship.
Yeah.
There are folks who, just from one meal in a house, develop lifelong relationships, and just sort of playing a role in making the world both bigger and smaller. And we have this tagline, which is exchange is for everybody. And it's also, giving that sense that having that connection with people from all around the world, and seeing that you're part of that whole thing is important.
Yes.
And so, what I do in the day-to-day is try to find ways to help people find that curiosity, interest, and that little nugget that connects them with people that they may not have ever heard of the place that they came from, or been familiar with the cultures that they've grown up in. And that helps us understand, in our own neighborhoods. We have people who may have been born in the same hospital, but, culturally have not, had the same life. And, you can meet someone from halfway around the world, and through understanding that, cultural differences are rich and interesting, you can figure out how you can connect better, even with folks who live near you.
Yes.
That have a totally different, cultural fabric than you.
Yes. So Global Ties is a larger organization. There are...
Well, Global Ties Kalamazoo is a fully independent local organization.
Oh. It's not connected, because Global Ties
we are a member. It's complicated, but basically we are a member of the
Help us understand. Help the audience understand. Yes.
I will help you. So there is a Global Ties network.
Okay.
And that is organizations, more than 80 ballpark, all across the United States that implement exchange programs in all 50 states.
Okay.
And each member organization is independent. So, for example, our organization was founded back in 1971, in the School of Social Work at Western, became an independent nonprofit about close to 25 years later. And when on its 25th anniversary, rebranded to Colleagues International. And on the 50th anniversary, we rebranded to Global Ties Kalamazoo, which is basically a licensing agreement with the name.
Okay.
But, we are, a member of the Global Ties Network, and we are a fully independent local organization in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Are you
So
still
it's
connected with the university?
We are not officially connected with the university, but we do lots of stuff with Western. And, we do bring social workers each year, which is what, the organization did from its earliest days, and we'll always, take them to Western. They've always been, welcome in Don Cooney's classes, and many other classes as well in the School of Social Work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me some of the stories that resonate with you. Tell me one story that when you think about, I know with my organization, Global Girls, whenever I think about the organization, I see one girl. I see a girl who just stands out to me. She grew up in the program. She started when she was like 4. And we normally wouldn't even take people that young, but she had 3 other sisters who were in the program. And now she's the executive director. I passed the torch on to her in December.
Wow.
So 25 years later. So that's the girl that I see when I think about Global Girls. What experience have you had with Global Ties, Global Ties Kalamazoo, that really stands out in your mind?
For me, it would be hard to pinpoint, one person or
one incident,
experience.
One story.
But, for me, it's really been, I want to say, a series of experiences, because at the end of the day, one of the beautiful things about what we do is that we bring so many different people in so many different fields. So even, just this week, we had a group of, young, innovative entrepreneurs from the Republic of Georgia. And then, overlapping with them, we had a group of women leaders from Southwest Asia, North Africa. So they were from 4 or 5 different countries. And, women's leaders doing important empowerment work in their communities. And, I think the thing that I love about what I do is that, I really get to know my community in depth.
Yes.
Because I want to share these folks from all over with as many people here as possible to have those direct engagements. But I get to learn about, what fun and cool and interesting things and major challenges and struggles are happening here in Kalamazoo. And then, be at the table and be part of conversations with people coming from far, far away, who had, like me when I first moved here, never necessarily heard of Kalamazoo before they came here.
Yeah.
And bringing amazing perspectives. And I think, for me, this opportunity to just engage with the world and do what we can where we are to make our community more engaged with the world, like it fills my cup.
Yes.
It's not one day or one
Yes.
person. It's a sort of a way of being where this is a normal thing to do when you're thinking about a challenge you're facing, to talk it through with somebody that you might have never met, and who's also dealing with challenges.
Yeah, so help me understand.
Yeah.
How does the program work?
Mm-hmm.
How do you, like, when you're planning out your year?
Mm-hmm.
These are the programs we want to run. These are the groups we want to bring. How do you decide the countries, the organizations, the partnerships?
So this works in many different ways.
Okay.
So when I say Global Ties Network,
Yes.
Global Ties US is sort of the convening body, the membership hub, and the implementing partner for the IVLP, which stands for International Visitor Leadership Program.
Yes.
And so the vast majority of the groups that we bring over the course of the year are IVLP visitors
so
from
they're
all
going
over the
through
world.
another body.
So they are coming to, say, 3, 4, or 5 cities in the United States.
Okay.
And we will structure, as an implementing partner, the whole program in West Michigan.
I see, because I thought you did it from beginning to, from soup to nuts, that you were contacting these people, finding them,
We do
so
that.
they are a part of so they might come through another, you might find out about them. Let me just process this for myself. If you found out about a group, let's say in Cambodia, I don't know, and you're like, oh my God, these people are doing some interesting work. I think they could benefit from a trip to Kalamazoo. Could you, the next step, would the next step be for you to contact Global Ties to start the ball rolling?
So IVLP
Yes.
is a program of the U.S. Department of State.
Yes, yes.
So-
would you contact them?
So the visitors who come to us you can't apply to be a participant in IVLP.
Okay.
Folks are selected by foreign service members, diplomatic corps, so people in embassies and
okay.
consulates all around the world, because it's recognized that they are movers and shakers, that they are leaders in their fields.
Yes, yes.
And they come here in a cohort-based program, either single country, regional country,
Okay.
multi-regional, meaning from many different countries, from many different regions.
Yes, yes.
Based around a theme
Yes.
or a set of themes. And so, we are a proud implementing partner of IVLP. So,
I see.
last
Yes.
year we hosted somewhere, I don't remember the numbers, but between 20 and 30 IVLP groups in Kalamazoo last year, something like that. And then we also hosted several youth leadership programs, so high school students we hosted from Brazil, from Iraq, from a few countries in Latin America as a group from multiple countries, and a virtual exchange with high schoolers from Haiti. And then, as I mentioned, we have social workers that come to us for 2 to 3 months.
Yes.
And then we also do long-term fellowship programs.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of different kinds of programs. So
Yes.
basically, if you think about it broadly, we do international exchange of, many different varieties that are not students and academics. So all that other stuff, privately funded, publicly funded, with partners that are implementing partners of State Department programs, other kinds, anything that can have like a meaningful international connection.
Okay.
With Kalamazoo,
Yes.
we want to do that. And then we also
Yes.
do some outbound exchange as funds allow us to.
So you might take people from Kalamazoo, or from, if they apply from other areas, you might take them on an exchange on a program where they're visiting a group of people. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's very nice. So how does that work?
that depends. So
Okay.
sometimes,
Just give me an example of one
we
specific
don't
program.
take a program
Okay.
abroad, but for example, one of the fellowships that we've been part of is YLI, so Young Leaders of the Americas. And so we'll bring entrepreneurs, and then their field placements are in different places. So right now we're sitting in the Public Media Network, for example.
Yes.
Just earlier, this year, Tracy Furman here from Public Media Network was able to go abroad to Bolivia
Yes.
to meet with the fellow who had been placed here with Public Media Network to advance a collaborative film project that they're working on. And, you know, from that same group, Sarkozy Bakery went abroad, and from that same group, Room 35 went abroad.
Okay.
And so, you know, they were able to apply to get funds from, you know, our partners, IREX, that, you know, we implement that program with, to go as Kalamazooans out into the world to further their collaborative relationships with their fellows. So that's an example.
That's beautiful. I see now. So you're bringing in these people. This is just one example of the work that you're doing. I need to just process this, if you don't mind. So you've brought these people to Kalamazoo. They've met people around. They've met different organizations, different individuals within that organization. They've started these conversations. Then from those conversations, those relationships and conversations, a few of them have come up with projects that they want to do. And, that's a beautiful way of building international community.
Yeah, and there are so many ways
So many connections.
to build international community.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And it gets easier and harder all the time.
So what have been some of the challenges?
Well, when I say easier and harder, for example, you know, we can do Zoom meetings. We can have a virtual interaction. And there's nothing like in real life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's much harder to build that informal time and that informal opportunity to really get to know someone in the ether.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we can do a lot better job now of maintaining relationships that we build because we have all these incredible technological tools. And it's nice to, you know, break bread together and sit around a table together.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So, I had him on my show a couple of weeks ago. But where do you see the organization, let me rephrase this, how has the organization been impacted by this current administration?
Well, I think, you know, the jury is still out. Basically, you know, we know how important and vital, like, what we do is, and, you know, how giving people an opportunity to interact with one another, you know, unfiltered, and just get to know one another, you know, makes our communities richer.
For sure.
Inside
But
the
funding
United States,
is still an
and,
issue.
you know, connecting abroad. So, you know, this year there have been funding pauses. However, you know, unlike some areas where there have been tremendous cuts, you know, that have already happened, we're in a wait and see space. But
Yes.
you know, what we do know is the tremendous value to our local communities
For sure.
of what we do,
Yes.
and that regardless of the funding landscape
Yes.
in the coming years, we will continue doing what we do.
Of course, the work is going to go on.
And, you know, regardless of how it's funded and how it's implemented and all these other things, there's no question to that. You know,
Yes.
we've been around for 54 years.
For sure. Does it impact the way just the general atmosphere with the bans on these people, this set of people, and that set of people, and the way that the administration approaches the global, the global culture? Has there been any impact on your partners who are abroad? Do they have a little more fear, or anxiety or a few more questions about traveling to the country?
I think we, I think there's a couple things in tension. So, for example, right now, you have people who have been hearing lots of stories about, you know, challenges at the borders.
Yes.
With valid visas and, you know, all the things. And then, you know, you hear these stories, and that has an impact.
Indeed.
At the same time, you also hear that, you know, funding has been cut for this thing or that thing. And so I think that you have, you know, folks who want to come and see this place, and might be concerned about, you know, like, am I welcome? And, you know, if the funding landscape changes in the future and there are fewer opportunities to come here, I want to go right now. So while you might feel, you know, I'm not sure, at the same time, you might feel, you know, this is a moment, and I want to embrace the opportunity of the moment, with fear, without fear, and really to have the experience. And I think something that's always been important in our work, under any administration and with folks from everywhere, you know, one of the beautiful things that you see through cultural exchange, is that, you know, people are people, and governments are governments.
Yes.
And governments, you know, are made up of people, but, you know, each individual that you meet is going to share, like, their perspectives. And I guess you get to see the sort of, you know, very, like, interesting tapestry that this place is when you come here.
Yeah, interesting. I brought a young lady when I was with Global Girls in Chicago. Brought her from Tanzania to Chicago to do a summer internship with us, and it was so easy for her to get a visa. And I've heard horror stories about trying to get visas, especially in some African countries. Just trying to get that golden slip of paper. Have there been any issues with visas?
I have not personally directly encountered that yet.
Oh, because also this organization is in a different class because they're coming through a government entity. So it's not quite. It's not like the average person over there trying to get over here for a program. But that's a lot different. Where do you see your organization in the next 10 years?
I see us continuing to be, you know, an address for all things international in our community. I see us doing more and more exchanges for Kalamazooans out into the world. We've been working for years to get off the ground these exchanges for youth development advocates. So take folks who work with youth to meet with folks who work with youth in other communities, in other places, under different, you know, political and social circumstances. Have them bring that back, show off their passport, and all the things they've learned. So I think more outbound, and, you know, working with the people here in Kalamazoo and thinking together, like, you know, what do you want to do? How do you want to be connected to the world? What would
Are you engaged in those
feel good for
conversations
you?
now?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you
And
give me an example?
Well, the examples that I just gave are part of that.
So I mean, like, are you working with a specific organization here in Kalamazoo? I know you're part of Rotary because we're both in Rotary.
Both in Rotary.
Yeah.
So the youth thing that I just mentioned, the youth exchange, you know, we piloted a couple years ago, and with a fellow who from Singapore who had come here, and I also went to Singapore. we started a virtual exchange between Kalamazoo and Singapore,
Nice.
and KidNet, Kalamazoo Youth Development Network, we're deeply involved in that as well, as are a bunch of others. And so, we're really looking at, who like meaningfully wants to do this kind of exchange. And, we're talking to lots of different folks in different fields about, what would be the most valuable exchange experience for you, and how can we help you make that happen? And we want to do more of that.
Cool. When I was in Chicago with Global Girls, we got grants from the MacArthur Foundation for their international connections programs, because they wanted to see arts organizations making connections. So I was able to take girls to India to do a program with girls in India, and take our girls to Grenada, and then bring some girls from Grenada to Chicago. So that's very,
Powerful
very
stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh my
Still
goodness.
with Global Ties?
I mean,
Because I know about Global Ties Kalamazoo. Now I want to know more about Jodi.
well, I mean, I would hope that, we'll be deeply sustainable, and, new generations of folks would be interested in taking on what I do. I mean, I love to be out in the world. I love to be deep in my community. So I feel like whatever I am doing in 10 years, it will include both of those things.
Do you have a vision? Do you see anything? What does the perfect 10-year story include for you? I'm trying to get you to be specific on some things, and you just keep running away.
I'm not a specific person, but I will.
Oh, really?
Basically, I think it will include lots of time spent in other places that I enjoy. We go to Spain a lot.
Oh,
go to Argentina
nice.
a lot, and
Nice.
I enjoy seeing my family in Canada. So continuing to be out and about in the world, and then also
I heard that Canada come out.
I did it. I said a boot.
I love it. I love it.
But really, I think trying to take it easy a little bit, and also try to do cool things that matter, and that's really all we can do. And can I say what that might look like 10 years from now? I think if
you could look into a crystal ball, and you
ball,
see something, and you say, that's it. Oh my gosh, that's great.
I don't have like a picture of utopia.
Okay.
That's just not me, you know?
Okay.
I live,
that's
fair. I want to be part of figuring out ways to do things that help people. I want to be part of, figuring out how to be part of solutions, figuring out how to, just be like a good human.
Okay.
And that's sort of where I am. And, sometimes I get a little too in the weeds. Sometimes I'll get, out of the weeds. But I think I always just want to have an understanding of what's going on and deepen that understanding and see where I can fit in doing something of value. And I guess from being, in a job, in a career, in a space where it's not about a specific, field.
Yes.
It's about people doing cool stuff in lots of different fields. I like to see how those things fit together, and really just how people can be their best selves. And so any role that I can play in that, and I just happen to feel that, when you have that connection across borders and geography, it makes a huge difference. And so just anything we can do to be more open, I want to be part of that. And what that might look like in 10 years, I have no idea.
Okay.
But hopefully
Now,
that is what I will be doing.
Great. How did you come to Global Ties Kalamazoo? Was there were you recruited? Did you see an ad? Did you?
I kept my job out of Montreal for the first 6 years that I lived here.
Oh my gosh.
And so I spent a lot of time in Montreal, and I traveled, internationally, and eventually I was like, I had gotten to know, the community I'm living in, and there were interesting things going on, and I, for the first time, thought, maybe there's something I'd like to do here. And I saw that this, small organization that I had never heard of was hiring for their only position. And I put up my hand. And the rest is history. But, it's been a privilege to be part of this organization that's been around for a while.
Yeah, so when you started, there was only one staff person, and that was you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So how big is the staff now?
We are 2 full-time staff.
Okay.
We have a fabulous intern, and we say intern, we mean paid intern.
Yes.
And then we do communications with consultants, and we have a lovely board of directors, and we have volunteers. But
Wonderful.
what we do is connecting people. So it's volunteers, it's the local community, and then a small and mighty team.
Awesome. Now I know I first met you when you had a conference.
Yes.
Here in the Epic Center.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with that conference. Great speakers, great presenters, interesting workshops. Do you have plans for that again?
That was a lot of fun. I don't think, we probably won't do that same kind of conference for at least a couple of years. That was a lot of work, but that was a Diplomacy Begins Here regional summit. And it was awesome. And we were really looking at a lot of what we're talking about today, which is like seeking, local solutions to global challenges, or global solutions to local challenges, both of those things at the same time here in Kalamazoo. And it was a lovely sort of rich dialogue, workshops, and just opportunity for people to look at things in new ways and see our own community in new lights. So, yeah, it's fun, bringing people together and connecting them to the world.
Great.
That's simple.
Very, very good. I have another probing question. How did you meet your partner? I just like getting in the weeds of people's lives, because that's the meat of the story for me.
We happened to be in the same place at the same time, and we met. Is there an edit of this?
No. But you can tell me as little or as much as you like. We just happen to be at the same place at the same time. That's enough. If that's what you want to share, that's fine with me.
All right.
Cool. Very good. Well, Jodi, is there anything you would like to say in conclusion?
No, thank you. I mean, this sort of went all over the place. You
because
surprised me with, like the very end, like, how did you meet your partner? That honestly is a very long and interesting story, but definitely not to get into in like the waning moments.
It's a part of your story,
I guess the short version, it was really, destiny, and back to the opening of this show, every little moment and little thing you do slightly different from some other thing. I'm married to someone from, a different continent. We didn't speak the same languages when we first met. And so I think, all the things had to align for this bizarre, happenstance that we met one another. And so I think, I guess, to what we've been talking about, yeah.
But
I guess even in that moment, it also shows just, how much those sort of connections that we find way outside ourselves and, you know, where we grow up, can become some of the most central relationships of our whole life.
And that seems to be the thread for your life. That you're going to step outside your comfort zone, you're going to step away from home, and you're going to make these global connections. You started making those global connections when you went away to college, and you said you'd met all these people from all over the world, and then you went here and there, and you lived someplace else for a while, and now you wind up with a partner who's from an entirely different country. So the theme seems to be the theme of your life is building this global community from the inside of you out. That's what I'm hearing.
You could say that, and I think, you know, I hope that I internalize, I see, I try to understand a lot of, you know, what's going on around me so that I can do that in a good way.
What now? I do have something else I want to ask, because we participated in Rotary is for Reading. And I was a high school English and theater teacher for a very long time. And then I had Global Girls when I was going into still working in schools. If you could, I'm going into this again, what or how can we bring more of a global perspective to our young people in schools? Education is so attached to the old way of thinking, and we're living in a totally different world these days. We're living in an interconnected world, not only because of the technology that we have, but because of the commerce is interconnected. Everything is interconnected. We build on ideas that might have started in one part of the world, and then it goes to another iteration someplace else. Yet our young people are stuck. Thoughts. Because it starts with our young people.
Yeah.
And if we keep doing the same thing we've always done, we're going to get the same thing we've always gotten.
No, I mean, the way school is structured is not built for, you know, any of the world, even over the last 20 plus years or longer. And I think, you know, once upon a time there were things like pen pals. I think, you know, kids learn so much from kids. We can even tap a little tiny bit into some of those technological things, and, you know, what a beautiful thing to connect, you know, second grade kids in one country with second grade kids in another country, and they say, like, this is what we do in school. This is what we do in school. I think, you know, it would help them see things that they just don't know. And the younger, and it's the same, you know, people are having lots of conversations about, you know, preparing, you know, kids for the workforces of the future. If you don't see it, you're not going to become it. And so I think anything that we can
Goes
do.
back to our conversation about, you said I didn't see it, so I didn't think I could become
anything that we can do to expose people to different opportunities, perspectives, ideas, as early as possible, makes all the difference. And then we'll figure out a structure for that.
You got to have adults with open minds. Open minds and open hearts.
Yes.
It's change for a lot of people can be very difficult. Well, is there one mantra that you live by? Do you have a guiding thought that takes you through times of, because everything is not rosy all the time, but things that bring you back to center, something that you do or say or you can lean on?
I think, you know, I've learned with age that just trying to not go fast, 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 but like, you know, live your life. And don't let people freak you out. Don't let fear control you or your situation. And if you can figure out, I say you, but like trying to navigate that guides me.
Okay. Very good. Well, Jodi, I so appreciate you sharing your story and the story of Global Ties Kalamazoo. If anybody wants more information on Global Ties Kalamazoo, what's your website?
We can be found at Global Ties KZoo, so globaltieskzoo.org,
Okay.
or on all the socials at Global Ties KZoo.
Very
as
good.
a handle, and you know, we would love to have you join us, whoever you might be, wherever you might be on Earth, and if you're in Kalamazoo, especially you.
Oh, I like that. Well, thank you so much for tuning in once again. And remember, all stories matter. So, how about making a point of getting to know somebody else by asking those tough questions and then listening deeply by being present for somebody else? Because it's through our stories that we really make these connections. And wouldn't it be a beautiful world if we were in some kind of way connected? Thank you so much. See you next time.